I have an agricultural science degree from Melbourne University. I did genetic engineering when I studied in that degree. I understand science. I understand its complexity. The one thing I know is that its complexity is way above our capacity to deal with it and to understand the ramifications of it. It's as simple as that. I want to say one thing about that video. Sarah Levy's in there. If you follow this debate, that paper was retracted. Under global corporate pressure, it was retracted. There's been a huge backlash against that. He's had offers from other journals, as I understand it, to republish it. Offers that have held from everywhere. There's thousands of people who have signed letters of support, many, many hundreds of scientists. The seminal work on DNA, which the Nobel Peace Prize was issued, would never have been published if the criteria which the editor of that journal used to retract Sarah Levy's paper was applied to that original work on DNA. The vast body of research would never be here today. It's an outrage. That's how strong and controlled science is. Science ain't science in this gene debate. I believe in climate change. The body of science, I believe, supports climate change. But I don't believe in the science behind GM. It has been subsumed by the corporate interest. And the regulators are really protecting the GM industry and not us, not our public health. Our next speaker is Scott Ludlam, who's well known to every one of you here in this room. So please welcome Scott Ludlam.
The idea of being described as a David and Goliath contest, and we all wish him well. And thanks for acknowledging the other families. First thing that struck me about this case when I came across it a couple of years back was how much it's split and polarised a community. Anybody who's spent any time at all in small regional communities will know that these are family networks spread across vast regions but in very tight-knit areas, and I cannot imagine the conflict and the pain and suffering this has caused to people on all sides of this debate, while the predatory corporate interests that set these things in motion in the first place hang out in their offices on the other side of the world, strategically ensuring that the legal cases go the right way and just inching the rest of us, the rest of the community backwards a step at a time. There's some real resonance here for anybody who's been following this debate for a while. I was working in state politics for Robin Chapman, Dean Margetts here in Perth, when the Commonwealth was regulating and when they were setting up the national regulatory framework that we're living under today, or they said at the time. As the film, I think, illustrates very beautifully, you should be right. You've got recourse to common law remedies in the courts if you think your interests are being trespassed on. So we don't need to embed any kind of liability regime in the Commonwealth legislation that sets this up. And I think what the film is illustrating beautifully is that sets a deliberate asymmetry of power, which is now being played out in the West Australian Supreme Court. Do you know what they said at the time? It's a quote from September 2003. The Australian Government Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry said in September 2003, farmers should take steps to avoid the unintended presence of GMOs. Farmers should take steps. Steve should have taken steps. Actually, he did. He wrote to his neighbours. He took steps. They planted the damn thing anyway. And then the next thing you know, he's in the middle of this extraordinary contest. So this is something that was foreseen. Anybody who was involved at the time that this was being driven through the federal parliament by the Howard government will remember we made these submissions. We said that this would happen. You can go, it's all on the record. It's not as though this has caught people by surprise. This was foreseen, and you have to acknowledge that it was foreseen not only by campaigners and people in this room who've been working on this for years, it was foreseen by industry as well. This is not an unintentional loophole. This is not something that accidentally got left out of legislation. The Howard government picked a side. They had the choice at the time to choose a side between multinational corporate biotechnology companies seeking to effectively take control of the entire food chain. Or they could have taken the side of you and I and everybody in this room, or the organic community, or just the regular farming community, not even necessarily those being certified, but people who don't necessarily want to have their livelihoods trapped and controlled by a foreign multinational. And the Howard government did choose a side, and they didn't choose ours. And that's why the legislation is drafted exactly as it is. And in any other endeavour, you know, the concept of polluter pays is actually reasonably well regarded, reasonably well embedded. We finally got it legislated for climate change. If you're dumping carbon pollution into the sky, that should cost. If you dump toxins into the water, you should pay for the cleanup. If you pollute the genetic inheritance of the biosphere, you should pay. Actually, maybe you should have been prevented from doing it in the first place. So fast forward 10 years and here we are. I'm very proud to join the Voice of the Greens to all of you, to Steve and his family, to do what we can to make sure that he prevails. Obviously for his own benefit and welfare, for the continuance and maintenance of his business and for that community. But also, as we're all well aware in this room, of the precedent and the reverberations that this will set up in farming communities from the wheat belt to the East Coast and right around the world. I'm very, very proud to be joining my voice to cause. But when you fast forward 10 years and look at the state of play now, you see somebody who was a junior minister, I guess he might have been at the time, this legislation was pushed through the federal parliament. And we are now enjoying the spectacle of the lodge being occupied by one Tony Abbott MHR, who is proposing to sign us up to an instrument called the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. Have a quick show of hands to see who's heard of that. The whole room, bless you all. And so probably I don't need to shake my fist about the TPP in front of an audience like this, but that really is a way of circumventing and end running even the kind of Supreme Court action that we're seeing Steve and his family have to undertake now with his supporters, because it would allow corporations such as Monsanto to sue governments, sovereign governments and parliaments for regulating things like food labelling. Now, I think if GM is so safe, we should put it in great big black letters on the label so people If it's such a great idea, why don't they take out advertising proclaiming that it's full of GMOs? And then people who are really desperately interested in eating that stuff can seek it out and find it. But I tell you what, I'd like to maintain the choice not to. That is an agreement that the Australian government is proposing to sign up to. The Labor Party, to their credit, although they set this in motion and did initiate Australia's participation in the TPP, did at least forego the option in ALP policy of allowing these investor-state dispute mechanisms that will allow a foreign corporation to sue the government in a foreign tribunal, and this would not require legislation through the Parliament. So we'll do what we can. Rach and I heading back to Canberra this afternoon, we will do what we can, but there are elements of these instruments, things like the TPP, that once they're embedded, they are impossible to unpick. So we have to fight this thing on all fronts. The TPP, we have to stand up and support Steve. We have to stand up, I think, and support not just the confrontation, the direct confrontation like the rallies that Shirley and others organised as part of this huge global mobilisation last year, but we also have to support people proposing the alternatives, the People's Food Plan. The kind of work that these guys here are doing is equally important. We know very well what we oppose. We also have to be very clear about what we support and what we want to do instead. Just keep in mind, in the David and Goliath story, David won. Thanks very much.